Okay, so I felt like last post needed a part two, kind of just a backstory to the poem that I recited from my self-published book on Amazon. All the information is in the part one, called Angry. So basically it's basically talking about all the anger that I felt like I didn't really process from childhood. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. A lot of people have a lot of anger and angst from childhood and especially puberty. And for me, I was like a super late bloomer, like super late. Like, I just, yeah, it was just really embarrassing and it was really frustrating, especially that age. I mean, it's human to compare, but especially that age, it was just like everybody else was, changing and becoming a woman and whatever. And it was like, I remember I was literally like 15 years old and still like, not, and guy went like, surprisingly, not on TikTok, don't get me in trouble, but whatever, just like very, very late development. And it was just like really, yeah, the boys would make fun of me. They'd be like, oh, da, 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 da. They'd say really nasty things. And so like there's multiple facets. So that was like one really painful thing is like, right, when like everybody else is kind of developing at a certain rate and you're not, you're just like, what's wrong with me? Like, what did I do, right? So that's one aspect of things. And what kind of layered it and made it even harder was I grew up Orthodox, so I'm Jewish, and I grew up Orthodox. So, very strict, very much like, it's hard to know what to say with this frickin' TikTok. Okay, so basically it's like, strict Sabbath observance, which is a whole other video, but Sabbath, kosher, and modesty rules, and part of that is virgin culture. Okay, so meaning you cannot partake in certain physical activities unless you're, before and unless you're married. So just a lot of like sexual repression and suppression. So like, technically, like, yeah, I did still watch the movies, but like, just a lot of it was very much like, okay, it's only between a man and a woman and when they're married and all of that. So for some reason, just to make a long story short, masturbation was considered evil, okay? Especially for the boys. For girls, a little bit of a question, but at the time, I didn't even know what I was doing. And then when I found out what I was doing, I thought it was like really bad, and I had like a lot of guilt with that. And then especially because you're so segregated, like, I don't think people even understand this. Like, most like Orthodox schools separate the boys and the girls from like literally first grade, kindergarten. So I was always in a classroom with only females. You weren't even allowed to touch the other, technically, yeah, you weren't even allowed to touch them, hug them, kiss them, anything before marriage. So it's just a lot of sexual repression. So that definitely affects puberty as well, because you're going through puberty and there's hormones and there's all this stuff. So when I say, like, in the poem, I say, oh, was it because of masturbation? Like, it sounds so, like, what are you talking about? But in a little girl's head, growing up in that culture and trying to kind of, like, make a logical reason for why things are happening the way they're happening, it like sounds so like, what are you talking about? But these things get wired in your head. And it's like this, it's like a similar type of thing, like when people's parents get divorced and the kids blame themselves. Like, it's it's not necessarily logical, but it's just kind of part of a child's psyche. And then another important aspect of the backstory is I am an identical twin. Yeah. So you can just imagine a lot of like, my mother really tried not to do like competition comparison, and honestly we pretty much got like, part of why this was so aggravating is we got the same grades. We really did. We were sister the valedictorian and not me. And it wasn't even a discussion. It wasn't even a conversation. It was just like, oh, okay, so this is the story. You're cool with it, right? Like, it was just almost like, it was just like a matter of fact. Like, okay, so your twin, she's getting valedictorian. You're okay with it, right? Like, so what am I supposed to say? What the fuck? Like, because that's what I was thinking in my head, and I just internalized it as, okay, well, why did she get it and not me? And I just decided it was because at the time I was dealing with, like, mental health issues, and I started seeing the school psychologist, and I was like, oh, basically they gave it to her because she's not having the anxiety and the depression that I was having. Which is like so stupid, but like this was also back in like the early 2000s where mental health was still like very, very highly stigmatized. So yeah, that's the backstory. And hopefully you'll learn more and more about me and get to know me and what makes me the crazy person I am now. But yeah, I think it's important to talk about it because I feel like so many people have similar situations, and it's important to talk about it and to, yeah, to just like be comfortable talking about the uncomfortable.